small kitten is born in a barn on a farm in small town USA. A small defenseless creature that's barely begun to comprehend the fact that it's even alive. He begins to snuggle up to his mother, but before he can reach her, cruel hands snatch him away. He's sold to a cosmetic company for about $15, and in that moment is doomed to a life of experimentation and death. He's locked in a cage much too small for him, and the horror begins. Forced to breathe toxic fumes, consume common beauty products like eyeshadow and liquid eyeliner, and have corrosive chemicals rubbed into his skin and eyes. When his use has finally run out for the company, he's anesthetized or put to sleep, and his stem cells are removed from his brain for further research. If he's lucky, he'll be killed before he wakes up. This sounds like something out of a horror movie, but the cold hard fact is, this happens every single day to hundreds of thousands of animals across the earth to develop something as simple as a lipstick. What I just described to you merely brushes the surface of what kinds of experiments our animal brethren are put through on a regular basis. I'm here to try and convince you that unless an animal experiment has valid medical value and will not drastically harm the creature involved, animal testing should be outlawed nationally. The data acquired from it is inconclusive in all cases, and as we as humans have no right to abuse the animals we're charged by God to care for. Animal testing dates back to the 4th century BC and is often found in ancient Greek writings. Aristotle and Erastus often used herbs to test the effects of the body on cats. They were one of the first to do so. Animal testing is defined as the use of non-human animals in an experiment to benefit either humanity or animal kind, and yet some experiments performed on animals do not even produce accurate, usable results for people or animal studies. For example, a group of Swiss scientists did a study on cancer cell cultures in white rats. The animals were injected with the cancer cells, and within hours, at least 5 or 4, they began to show the horrific symptoms of hair loss, foaming at the mouth, and visible lumps on their skin. These creatures suffered for months before scientists developed a cure for them. Then, voila, they were cured. That's great. But we couldn't use the research that was taken from that because cancer develops differently in a rat than it does in a human. So those animals suffered for no reason. Any cure we find this way can't be applied to human cancer research. The only effective way to research cancer treatment in humans is to use human tissue cultures. Now, human tissue cultures are much less grotesque than they sound like. All it is a bit of human DNA. You can take a piece of your skin, you can actually do spit, and we can build cultures from that. You can be an organ donor when you die, and your body can actually go to science to help with research. All of these specimens are obtained from human organ and body donors who have passed and work much more, if not entirely more effective than testing on animals. Now, since the animals used in testing, such as dogs, cats, fish, and monkeys, have a different physical makeup than humans, the medical research we do on them is practically pointless. This is Samuel L. Jackson. This is a cat. Samuel L. Jackson is not a cat, and this cat is not Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, that's just basic science. And it's not just the obvious physical differences. These animals have chemical makeup completely different than us. They don't have a lot of the chemicals going around their brains, like they have a lower serotonin rate, dopamine reacts differently in their bodies. So if we inject them with vaccinations and things that we would usually find beneficial, it actually can kill them. Experiments claim no practical application and are not fundamentally progressive biological research. If anything, we're setting back medical discoveries by years because we're wasting resources and money on pointless and cruel experimentation. Companies that do not test on animals only delegate it so that if someone tries to sue them for, say, an allergic reaction, they can't be sued. Yet these companies don't even document the results of the petrifying operations they do because they know that they can't validly use the results to prove anything, except that a rodent dies a slow, painful death when subjugated to inhale Windex for an hour or 2. Duh, we know that. We know they can help kill humans too. We don't need to slowly murder a defenseless being just so we can figure that out. Yes, I said murder. This is a graph that shows how many animals in proportion to the others are killed in lab experiments each year. The majority are mice and rats, but amphibians and fish make up a huge part of this. That is ridiculous. Amphibians, and especially fish. If you look at a fish compared to a human, there is no similarity at all. We do testing on these creatures that can't be applied to human science at all. The exploitation of these critters is morally wrong. They have lives just the same as you do. They're born, they have families, and they live their lives to the best of their abilities. Was Adam not given all the creatures of earth to name and watch over? God charged us with caring for the world, not just the humans, but every bit of it, from the water to the grass, to the slimy, scaly, furry things that run around with us. We were meant to raise them for food and clothing, but not for sick and pointless research. Look at us compared to dogs. How many of you own a dog? Okay, that's almost all of the class. Look at your dog and look at yourself. You're both breathing, you both sleep, you both eat, you are both alive. You're alive and they're alive, and thus we have the right to live out our life in a non-painful way. Sometimes animal testing doesn't serve a true scientific purpose. It's done to provide humans with luxuries such as cosmetics. Girls, I know we all have to look good thanks to society, but you can find other ways to look pretty without using cosmetics that are tested on animals. DoSomething.org has compiled a list of cosmetic companies, including Revlon, Estee Lauder, Avon, L'Oreal, and Procter & Gamble, which all test on animals ranging from rabbits to canines. L'Oreal is one of the biggest defenders on animal rights, and they have been ever since the company started. Everyday activist organizations like PETA are working to stop the injustices that happen in these labs. I won't go into terrible details or show you any grotesque pictures, because I think you get the idea. The cosmetic companies go so far as to force various rodents to consume products like eyeshadows and rub facial creams all over their bodies. Have you ever sprayed perfume around a pet? You notice that they back away from you. It's because the smell is actually painful for them. So when a rabbit breaks out with welts from a skin conditioner, or a post-mortem dissected rat is found to have its stomach imploded from ingesting eyeshadow, is that any different than spraying perfume down your dog's throat? A few shocking statistics. Over 5.3 animals are killed each year in laboratory experiments, 5.3 million. Even more are made to suffer fates worse than death. They live out years, 5 to 6, just being experimented and tortured. They're never given painkillers because we like to examine how they feel pain and how they suffer. In Great Britain alone, in 2012, 2.6 million live animal experiments were authorized. This means that painkillers didn't have to be used when the experimentation was going on. Over half these animals didn't even have to be put to sleep before invasive experimentation was performed. They could be cut open while they were conscious and breathing. If we eliminate animal testing in the U.S., excluding valid, humane medical testing, we can save $1.2 million in scientific research, which could be devoted to more valid works like human tissue cells. Do animals feel pain like we do? Of course we do. Of course they do. We can set fire to a guinea pig covered in bleach and watch it squeal in pain as it tries to extinguish its burning flesh. We can prick a snake with needles while it's clamped down to a table and see how it attempts to defend itself. There is no question. Animals feel pain the same as humans, but unfortunately, the government doesn't hold us accountable. The Animal Welfare Act, or AWA, was set up in 1966 by Congress to regulate the nature of animal experiments. It tells what size a cage must be for a certain animal, how many toys they need, and requires that food and water are clean and regularly accessible. Superficial nonsense. It doesn't get into the heart of what's going on with these animals. It does not protect rodents of any variation, birds, or cold-blooded animals, and yet they make up 95% of the overall animals used in testing. The other 5% would be mammals like monkeys, cats, and dogs. Some of the horrific things that happen: turtles and lizards are submerged in different chemicals that we put in our cleaners to see what happens to their skin. They use chickens a lot. That's one of the main avians that they use, but they'll inject vaccines and medicines that we use, like penicillin and insulin, into their throats to see how fast it would kill them. This has no valid medical research at all. We can't apply it to humans. The overall use of animal vivisection or live dissection is not challenged by the AWA in any way. An animal can be put to sleep and slit open so its slowly deteriorating insides can be examined. The Animal Welfare Act also doesn't prohibit the killing of an animal after an experiment is over. Scientists will take a life simply because the animal can't be used for another experiment because it's been so tampered with. No one has that right. No one should have the power to senselessly take a life. Australian writer and philosopher Peter Singer once said, "Humans are not completely above nature. We have a responsibility to respect nature and do all possible good to non-human life." It's in our attitudes and in the way we treat animals used for experimentation that respect is shown. And unnecessary deaths are morally no different from cold-blooded murder. The question of animals being equal is not, can they reason or can they talk, but can they feel pain like we do? No living thing deserves to be inflicted with unnecessary pain, especially when a life on earth is all they have. They don't have souls. They don't go to heaven like we do. So we need to respect that they only have this time on earth, and we can't subjugate them to cruelty while they're here. After all, when we lose our compassion, our control, and our humanity, are we still human? Can we be human if we find it all right to kill without consent or reason? Senseless animal testing must be abolished if this world is going to take one more step towards harmony and righteousness. So what can you do? Avoid products that test on animals. A few that would be Unilever, Clorox, and Johnson & Johnson. You can see a lot of the brands that actually use animal testing. Not necessarily foodstuffs, but things like cleaning and cosmetic products. Use what are called happy cosmetics, ones that are firmly against testing on living creatures. These types of products don't require animal testing for any reason other than protection against lawsuits. So why should they stand? We don't use it to develop the product, we use it to keep people from taking our money. Forever 21 and Abercrombie & Fitch both sell happy cosmetics, as well as Bath & Body, Biotone, Carmex, Conair, and Victoria's Secret makeup line. Check the labels of products like cleaner and soaps too, to make sure they don't test. If they don't test on animals, they'll probably state it or even have one of these symbols on the back. They're usually bunnies, like all the time. So raise your voice, it makes a difference. When companies see that a product is dropping on sales, they ask customers for feedback on why that is. If you stop buying animal testing products and tell them that's why, they will stop. We're charged with the duty of caring for the creations of God. They're not people, they don't have souls, but they do have a life while they're here on earth. And we can respect their right to live fulfilled lives. They were intended for us to use, but not in a perverse, naming manner. We need to respect that while they're here, they're our friends.